channel, like way more.
So what was last Thursday? Did we do an open lab last Thursday? We may have. I think we did. I think I let people do an open lab because I said we would do this one together. And as I said, a couple of people have done it. So, and a couple of people have done it. I'm always interested when people do it before I do it because sometimes you come up with actually better solutions. But I'm going to do it. It kind of. I always do it in sometimes the more awkward way. I don't know if it's awkward. More steps because I think it's clearer to explain step by step. Because a lot of these steps, when you get to know Python better, you can shortcut them a little bit. But I think it's good in the teaching of it to go through it kind of step by step. That's my explanation, and I'll stick to it anyway. So I'm just in VS Code. I have no files open right now, so I'm going to open a new file. We've done a lot of files.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's quite a bit of stuff in there. Is Python making a little bit of sense to you? No? I'm going to call this one GradePy. And I'm going to do these as separate files, although you could do them all in one file if you wanted. They don't have to be in separate files. Unlike if anybody's done Java. In Java, every class has to be in its own file. That isn't true in Python. So I'm going to do GradePy. Guys ready? Okay. So I'm just going to call it class grade. And we'll do an init. So I will do def underscore underscore init. It took me a long time to realize that there were two underscores there. I was thinking it was just a long one, just a regular underscore, with the two underscores. And if you don't do two underscores, it won't work, right? So I am going to then just do self, comma, and I guess we could take in all the arguments right now. So whenever you initialize the grade, you have to put them in. Remember, initialization, the init is the constructor of the class. It sets everything up. You don't have to take everything in there. If you do put things to take in there, you have to pass them in when you declare the class. Does that make sense? You look dubious, but so the things that you need for the grade, I'm going to say class. Well, no, not class. That's a keyword. How about course? And then we'll do credits and grade. Actually, don't want to necessarily do it as grade. So let's do, what would we want to call it? Final grade. The reason I don't want to call it grade, it's not cumulative. It's only for the one class. Mark, final grade, one grade. I don't know. I don't want to name it grade because you don't want to get into the habit of naming two things the same thing. It gets confused. So it won't know whether you're talking about the class grade or the variable grade. It won't know the difference. Score. Actually, score could work. You could do, I mean, whatever you want to name. You could also be just like course grade. Score will work, though. All right, so a colon here. And then what we'll do is we'll just say self.course equals course. Self.credits equals credits. And again, if you wanted to name them different, you could. Self.score equals score.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
When I put equals course, I get this thing that says connection refused error. I don't know why.
Let's see what we got. Well, you did, so,
Like this is online.
yeah, it was recorded. Is it doing that? Why is course green on yours?
Not sure.
You're doing Python, that's fine. Dot course equals course. Do the lower picture because of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Put a colon after grade. Yeah, maybe. That is what, no, wow. Anyone else having that problem?
It's just all I was trying.
That is so weird. Maybe just name course something different.
Class.
Don't name it class. 'Cause
Oh, that's right.
yeah, so,
Section.
section. Yeah, change that to section. Self that section. Section. Weird. It doesn't like anything.
I'll return it back. All right, no worries. Yeah.
I don't understand what's going on there. Nobody else is having that problem then. Every time she types in equals, it does some preset variable, and I don't understand why. Did you do your, maybe I wonder if it's your init. Anyway, so that's our initialization. You know, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, it looks like a predefined term. Well, it should be smart enough to understand that it's a variable here, but it is, the fact that it says credits suggests that it thinks that there's some predefined word somewhere. You looking that up? Or if we get an error on it, but I've done it before with credits. I mean, I did this and I didn't have a problem. But I'm not sure, what would the credits refer to? I don't know. Is it typing still doing the same thing? Let me look and see what you got.
I'm just gonna start it over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Get rid of the space between death and
Perfect.
not there. Yeah, after death.
After that.
No. There was something about what it was doing without a space there. You have to have a space before that. All right, go ahead. So, what else do we need to, we're entering all of these, we have a grade. Probably we want to do something where you can get these out, get these back. So we probably need some methods. We don't really need any to set them because we're going to have to set them when we initialize the class. But we need something so that we can see them outside the class. So what I will do is def get course. Maybe I do a capital C on that. And it needs a self in it. And then we just return course, self.course. And then I'm going to do def get credits. And we'll do self and return self.credits. And then we will do one last one for def. Get, we called it score, so it's called score. Self. And return self dot score. Okay. So are there any questions on that? That's going to be my whole grade class. This class is really just to store stuff, information. Right? There are a lot of classes. If you take the Python thing, the Python, the Django thing, whether next quarter or in the winter, you'll see that there are what they call model classes that are there to do nothing really but store data. So they're ways of organizing and storing data. This is just a way of organizing your grades. So you want to know what course it was, you want to know how many credits it was, and you want to know what your final score was. And this will just store all that information into a bundle. The advantage of doing that is that you don't have to have, instead of passing 3 variables to another thing to work on, you only have to pass 1 thing, right? Because it's all stored together. Questions on that before I go on to the next thing? So I said I'm going to do it as 3 files, but you could do it as 2 or 1 file if you want. So I'm going to do file, save, just because I want to save this before I go on. The other thing, if you're doing it as 1 file, then you just come down here and go back to the margin and do your next class, right? You can do them all 3 together. But I'm going to do them as separate because I think it works better separately. I mean, logically. So we're doing assignment 8 together. So this is our class. Class, and then let's do our grade class. I'm going to do another file. So let me go up here. I'm going to add a file, and we'll call this one student. And we'll do it as student pi. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to say from grade import grade. I did capitalize it, right? Tell you what, I'm going to capitalize it and save it again. I capitalize grade because grade, the class name should be capitalized. And otherwise it gets confusing when you do the import.
The file name is import, like after import.
So this is the file name, and this is the class name. That should work. It's not complaining right now. And then I'm going to make a class student, and we'll start the class student. So go ahead and get up there, and I'll show you the grade thing real quickly. So I was making the grade class. I'll give you just a second before I go on ahead with the student. So it takes in the self, the course, the credits, and the score. And then I just assign those in. So the initialization, we'll pass those in when we initialize the class. And then I did for each of those, I did a get course, get credits, get score. And that's the whole class there. So something like this for each of the fields. Give it like 2-3 minutes. We'll go on back to the student pi. And again, as I said, if you want, you can do it all in one file if you want. Or you can do it as, like I'm going to do with 3 files.
Scroll down.
Yeah, it's just exactly the same. Got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so in StudentPy, I'm importing grade. So again, you don't have to do the import if you're doing it all in one file. But if you're doing it in separate files, you'll want to import the grade. So the from is the file name, and then this is we're importing the class. And then I've created a class student, and we'll do we want to do init for the student? Probably. Just do it fairly simple. So I'm going to do a def init. And again, it's 2 underscores there. And then I need a self here. So for the student, let's don't make this super complicated. What name ID?
SID.
So we could do like SID, name, anything else? Email. I think that's enough. You can't do the grades here, right? Because we need to basically loop through and add the grades. But we'll initialize things here. So I'm going to do self SID capitalized. Could be, it doesn't have to be capitalized. Equals SID. Name, self name equals name. Self email equals email. And I'm going to do. Oh.
In order to pass values to this object student, we need to initialize it with the init. And when we call the
You can do it this way, or you can also create. Know how we had the gets, which let you see it. You can also create set methods if you want.
Okay.
So you could leave this empty, except for
Just
self,
make methods and do.
and just make methods that allow you to add them. You can do that as well.
Okay.
So that's actually 2 different strategies, and sometimes. Now, in other languages, I don't know about Python, because in Python you basically got an init or you don't. In other languages, you can overload the constructor, so you have different versions of it. I don't know that you can do that in Python. Don't know that you can't either, though, so I will try to look that up. So if you don't have it, you could just do self here and leave this empty, and then you could do sets, and then you could just add the things by calling the method. Yeah.
Or okay.
I'm going to call this one grades, and it's going to just equal an empty squares, right? Remember what that is? We're initializing an empty list. The grades list is going to store grade objects.
To append that to it.
So what we'll do is we'll have a method that will allow us to enter a grade. And then we'll have a method to calculate the GPA. We might have a method that just shows all the grades. Maybe just returns the list. That's what it would do. And then, so we'll need gets for all of these so that we can get those values out. If that makes sense. And then we'll have one where we add an element to the grades, and then we'll have something where we return the grades, and maybe a string element where we show their SID, name, and email.
So we're gonna separate methods for get SIDs to passing.
Yes.
So
So one of the things I'm going to do, this is set is usually for getting the value into the class. Get is for getting it out. Right now, we've entered these data into the class, but we wouldn't be able to see them. They're all private to the class. And actually, there's a lot of in the idea of encapsulation, every field should be private to the class except where you need to expose it. But what we'll do is I'm going to do, so we'll do gets for these. So like get SID. Each one of these takes the self as an argument. Self drives me nuts, but it has to be everywhere. So I'm going to say return self SID. And we'll do it the same for get name. That should have self. And return self name and etc. Get, I think we had a third argument, email. If you don't, there's another way we could do these, which we'll do also, but we'll return self email. Okay, so those are to allow other classes to see the values that have been passed in. All right, so we have a get for each of those. We don't have a get yet for the list, but we will do one. All right, so we will return the list. But first we're going to do one where we add to the list. So this is a method. We want to be able to add a grade to the list. So I'm going to def add grade, and we'll just we'll just do add a grade object, I guess. Add grade. And then I will do grades, append, grade.
Can you explain what that last one, I'm sorry, does again? I followed you until that.
So we have a grade list called grades. So it's a list. It's like it'll hold things. So we're going to pass in a grade object, and we're going to append it to that list. We're going to add it to that list. Yeah. Any other? Does that make sense?
You don't need self.grade.
We do actually. Good catch. We need self.grades. We don't need self.grade. I always leave out a self somewhere. I don't know.
For the parameter, you don't need a self on the add grade one, just a grade.
No, because it's not going. It's being added to this, which belongs to the class, but this is just local.
Okay. Could we put a self in there?
I think it might confuse things actually at this point, because it's not. It's coming from the outside. It's being added to this object. It's not really a class variable.
So in the other program, in main, we'll add it to there.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put like a display class, and one of the things we'll do in the display class is we will loop to add as many grades as need be. And then remember, a grade object. Each grade object has the course name and the credits and the final grade for the class, right? So we'll pass all of those things into here and they'll be stored in this. Yeah.
Maybe you just answered it, but why is everything else self, but that one has grade in it? class dot.
This one is coming from the outside, and it's only being used locally. It's not a class variable. No other method needs to have any idea what it is.
It's on the
So,
outside meaning.
but we do need self there. Not self grade, but we need self comma grade. Right? Because the self is related to here. So I need the self for this. But grade is, this might be what you were thinking of for self here. Grade does not need to be self.grade, but we do need to pass self into the method. Again, I always forget selfs because no other programming language does anything quite like this. One of the last things, we're going to do two last things, and then I'll walk through this again. And how would you know how to do this? You just have to do it a few times, right? The logic of it is the initialization, and there's lots of different ways you could initialize this, including passing nothing. Just not even, you can even just not do an initialization if you want. You could do, where I have gets, you could have set and get if you want. You could have sets here too if you wanted to override.
Is that like the accessor and the mutator?
Yes, exactly. This is the accessor. The set would be the mutator because it allows you to change the value.
Okay.
And you could certainly add those. It wouldn't hurt anything. One of the last things I'm going to do is I'm going to get grades, and we'll do a self. I'm just going to return self dot grades, which is the list. So I'm going to pass the list back. And once we pass the list back, then we can loop through it and do things. We also need to do our calculation, right? GPA. So that's the complicated part. Let's add that. So I'm going to do def. Name this whatever you want. I'll call it calculate GPA. So let's see if I can do this. So we need, so we're passing in credits, and we're passing in, so I'm going to do total credits equals 0. And total, so you sum the credits and you sum the total weight. Zero point zero. I'm doing 0.0 to suggest it's a float. Hopefully that'll take the suggestion. Otherwise, you might need to cast them to float. So I'm going to do for grade in grades. So for every grade in grades, we're going to do, and you might want to do something like if grades, before you do the for grade in grades and all of that, you might want to check to make sure there's something in there. Let's see if I do that. It would be like if grades, actually is if length grades not equal 0. Then I would want to say total credits plus equal credit or Do I need to give this a variable? Do I need to do that? You guys remember doing this? I've done this recently and I forget.
I don't think you need the G, I think you need to create as a iterator. Any time.
Well, we don't have to say how many times. But I don't know that this works directly off the object in there. Has anybody done this before? We could do an iterator. I've done this. Let's see what errors come up. It could just be for G and grades.
Well, you have to do the,
What?
you have to, instead of grade, it would be the grades at position.
Well, you should be able to do, there actually is a syntax like that. I can show you. If I go to,
This is pure Simon A.
what?
This is pure Simon A.
Yeah, no, this is just a Simon A.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, I was going to look. I mean, I have in the Django, I've been doing this, but Python, let's do Python. They basically call it a for each. That has for index in range, which we could do. But I think there's a simpler for X in my list. All right, well, let's just do the iteration rather than spend time looking this up. So let's change this to for I in or len grades, and it's a lowercase l. Grades I dot there's a simpler syntax, but we'll go with this. So that iterates through them. So it's a list, right? So basically what we're saying is for each of the counters, this is the index. We'll go through and we'll get the credits and we'll add it to the total credits. And then we'll get the total weight is the credits times the grade. And then the GPA. So I'm just going to do GPA is equal to total weight divided by total credits. And I will do this. I'm also going to do GPA equals 0.0. And then at the very end of this, I'm going to do return GPA. So if there's nothing in the list, this is the complicated one. And I'm not 100% sure it'll work, so we'll have to test it. But we get the total credits. We just declare some variables at the top. And I initialized them all to 0.0. So if the length of the grades is greater than 0, and I think it should be LEN, right?
Yeah.
LEN. So if the length of grades is greater than or equal to 0, or if it's not equal to 0, that's what I'm trying to say, then we'll do the calculations. It's not worth doing the calculations if it's 0. If there's nothing in the grade list, it doesn't make sense to do this, right? So we're saying check to see if there's something in there. If there's something in there, then we'll do this. Yeah.
You don't have to list the array. Does it need to be self.grades?
It does indeed. This needs to be self.grades. And each one of these should be self.grades. I don't think the other variables need that, but the grades need this.
Not the one in the if block.
Oh no, it also needs it. I told you, self screw me up all the time. It's a good thing that you guys are paying attention. Is there anywhere else that I need them? We shouldn't need them for GPA. We shouldn't need them for total weight. Those are all local variables. But anything that's a class level variable needs to self by it, and grades is good catch, because that wouldn't have worked. It would have said that it didn't know what grades was. Okay. So basically, we make sure that it's not empty. If it's not empty, we loop through it, and we total the credits, we get the total weight, and then we do the division, and we return the GPA either way. So if the GPA has numbers, it'll return this. If not, it'll return 0.
Does weight and total weight use capital letters?
Yes. Good eyes. These are the kinds of things that I know you guys do, but I do also. I mean, I almost never run these and find that I haven't had a typo. I may be a little better at seeing my typos after the error, but good eyes. Is that the only place? Is there anything else I screwed up? Credits, weight, total weight, total credits. I'm pretty sure those are all lowercase in the class, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, last thing I'm going to do in this class is we'll go back and we'll do one more method, which is just a string method. So I'm going to do underscore underscore str underscore underscore self. And I'm just going to return self.name. What else did we end? Well, let's do self.sid plus, and I'm putting a space in here, plus self.name name plus empty space. Doesn't matter double or single quotes, but you should be consistent. Plus self dot email. And that's going to be what we return. I'm not going to return the GPA there because it may not exist. Does that look okay? So walk from the class from the top. We have got a student class. And we imported grade because grade's being used inside the student. That's actually part of it, is how these classes interact. Just get a feel for that a little bit. We do have an initialization where we have to pass in the student ID, name, and email. I'm going to, we have gets for those so that we can get them. We've got add grades, so we can add grades. We have a thing where we can return the grades. And then we have a calculate GPA. And the very last thing is just a string. So when you say print and you give the name of this class, if you say print student, it will return the SID, the name, and the. If you don't do that and you say print whatever the class, the local name is for student, the variable name, it'll just print the name of the class. That's what it does by default. If you don't write your own string method, it just prints the name of the class. Yeah.
Why is there 50 strings there?
It provides a space because I'm concatenating. So without it, it would all run together. All right, so this is my student class. No guarantees that we won't be back here fixing things. So I'm going to save it also. And then we'll make a new class. I would call it just display, but we've already got a display. Let's call it student display. And .py. So one of the things I'm going to do here is from grade import grade. We'll do from, we call the other one student, import student. Because we need both of those. This, again, you don't have to do these imports if you just write them all in the same file. But, so those should work. They may fail in themselves. And then I'll do class. I'm going to call it display with the self. And I'm not going to do really any initialization for this class. We're just going to use it to get the stuff and then to display the answers, right? So do you want to go through the effort of, we probably should, actually entering, you know, asking what the student name is and all of that? Okay. So one of the first things I'm going to do is say, student lowercase. Now you could, I'm just going to say equals student. Oh, we have to enter all these things first. So before we do that, let's do, so we need to know SID. Let's do it lowercase. And type. And then I'm going to do name equals, and actually let's do these as self. I don't know if they need to be self, but we'll do them in self anyway. Input, enter the student name. And we'll do, oops, enter the student email. Okay, so we got all of that. Now, when we declare student, and student, and this one I am going to do self. And student, we need SID, name, and email. All right, because we said we were going to enter all of that for that. Does that make sense? We're just getting those three things, and then we're initializing the student with those three things. You don't have to make this equal student, student. I mean, if it's the only difference between these is the case of the S. So if that confuses, you could just call this stud or ST or S. You know, you don't have to name it.
You don't need to name self SID when you put it.
You do, actually. Good. Although, I don't know if you need the self there. I don't know if you need the self on these. Because they're only going to be here, and the student is going to contain them. Let's try it without the self. For the self, the student needs the self. If we have to add it back in, we will. But I'm not sure that we would need it, because they don't have to be class variables. And actually, since this is a class, we really should do def. What do we want to call it? Because we're basically creating a student. Create student. Add student. Make student. Whatever you want to call it. And these should be indented. I was doing them in the middle of nowhere, which I think the 3 spaces that it's indented generally. 4. So these need to go one more. All right. Because you really shouldn't just do code in the middle of the class. It should be in a method. And in fact, it might have thrown an error with that, actually.
Self needs to be in class. Class display.
It does not. I said you guys you're helping me debug a lot of stuff that I would figure out later. Yeah.
Let's say email equals engine student, so name equals.
Yes, it should. Good eyes. Because otherwise, all we do is rename the name to an email, and there won't be a name. All right, so we've got the student stuff here in class display. So then let's do, actually, we might do an INI in a minute. We'll do the INI last. So let's do another method. So let's do the grades. And what we'll do is we'll just, so this just needs a self. Okay, so we need to create a grade, but before we need a grade, we need to get the course information, we need to get the credits, and we need to get the final grade, right? So basically, I'm just going to do course, and I don't think these need to be self. I'm going to input enter the course name. I'm going to do credit equals, and this one I'll do float, although it should probably work as an int, but let's do a float. Enter the number of credits. And then we'll do, I guess, final grade equals float. Enter the final grade for the course. And then I will do, and this one will have a self for sure, self dot grade. Do I want to do that as grade equals, no, so we need a grade class. But yeah, we can do that. Self.grade equals grade. And then I need to enter the course, credits, and final grade. And then we would need to student self.student actually. We called it enter grades, I guess. Oh, I messed that up. Self.student.add grade, and we'll pass in the grade. Now that only allows you to enter one grade, right? So what we need to do is put that in a loop. Does that make sense? So I'm going to say while. So, and before I do that, I'll say done equals y. And then I'll say, well, done not equal y. We'll do all of this. And then again, I should have done that first so I didn't have to indent these manually. And then we'll ask, so done equals input this is probably done. Set the proper syntax. I always forget for the lower.
Yes.
It's odd that it's not colored.
Dot lower.
Is it done dot lower?
Yeah, it's dot lower.
Like that?
Yeah.
Still doesn't seem to, it should color it. Different languages do it differently and I always forget. Is that correct, you know? We could look. Don't want to spend a lot of time. That's correct, okay. So, this allows us to enter grades. And that's basically all I need to do for that method. And then basically it's just to output everything, right? So we want to get the GPA. We want to get just display everything. So what do I want to call this method? You like that method name? Output stuff. If you have a better name, you should use it. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to just display some things. Like the first thing I may display is just I'm going to say print student, self.student. Right? That actually should print out that string. So it should print out their SID, their email, everything else, right? So let's get a, I'm going to do, I'm going to call it grade list is equal to student dot, self student dot, and we want to get the method out of there, which is to get grades. So we're going to get their grades. What happens if you just print the list? Anybody tried that? I kind of want to, I don't know if it works for complex lists. I think it's just going to say object 1, object 2, object 3. So let's do for I N LEN grade self, well, I shouldn't need it, grade list. And what I want to do is I want to print all the courses. So we'll print grade list where I dot course. If I just do a comma, will that space it? I'm not sure if this will work. Dot credits. And we might have to convert these to string, a couple of them. Grade list I dot score. We'll see if that works.
Missing 2 capital L's in the print block. Yes, the grade list. The
Capital.
last one.
Oh, yeah, this one and the first one. Thank you. So that's going to print all of those out. And then we want to get the GPA. So I'm going to do GPA, which was local up there, equals self.student dot get calculate GPA. And then I'll print it. And that needs parentheses. That should give us everything we want to know, right? It gives us the GPA, it gives us the name of the student, and it gives a list of all the classes. Assuming that I wrote the things right, so we might have some debugging. Yeah.
Self.student followed by calculate GPA. Is that a way to like invoke the function?
Right, so self is the student object, calculate GPA is a method of that object. Didn't we do a similar kind of thing? Yeah, self.student get grades, although that should have a parenthesis
So
on
this
it.
turns into an object.
So student is an object. Student is the instance of an object. You access the methods of an object with a dot, right? So self-student is our object, and it has a method get grades.
That will run the
And it'll run the get grades method in student. So the thing with an object is that you do it, the name of the object, local name, the instance, and then dot and get access to its methods. I don't know if this will work. Now, the thing I'm going to do at the very top of the class, I am going to do a def INI. And I'll put in self. And what I'm going to do for it is not initialize variables, but I'm going to call, we'll do a call make student, the three methods. So I'm going to do self dot make student. Self dot enter grades, and self dot output stuff. So the initialization, when we call this class, we won't have to call those internal methods because it's already calling them. So when we initialize this class, the first thing it's going to do is call make student. And then as soon as it's done with that, it'll come back here and it'll say enter the grades. And then as soon as it's done with that, it'll do the output stuff. So when we do a def main, so way down here, and I could do this in a whole nother page, but I won't. I'm going to do def main, and inside the def main, I'm just going to say display equals display. That calls the class. There's no arguments that have to be passed. I don't know if I need parentheses there. We'll see. And then that should be it, and then just main. Let's save everything. Now, StudentPy says it has one error. What is the error? Doesn't like link. Does that do it? That makes it happy. So that might mean I need to do that in display too. I did a range. So remember how 4 is usually I in range? So I did a range of the length. The reason I did that is just that it said that there was an error on student. So if I go back to student, oh, I just closed student. Let's open student. Student had, it had a red dot. It had an error on the loop here. It said that I couldn't iterate with length, but if I use range and then length returns a number, returns an integer. So if there's 5 grades, this will return 5.
That was number 4.
It's fixed, I added the word range. And I did the same thing here because we have to loop. So I added the range here too. I'm going to save it. So, so it says I have 2 errors on student display. Notice how it says 2 over here and it's red? That means it's found 2 errors. So let's see what those errors are. So I think it says I don't use it, but that isn't true. Grade. Oh, you know what? Because I made grade self here, I need to, I don't know that I need it to be self, but since I did it, I'll do it as self here. So I left out a self there. Where I'm looking for the other error, if there's another error. So I'm going to save again. So it just has one green thing now. It claims display isn't used, but that's not true. Because all I have to do is call it to use it. So it seems to be happy now. Are you guys ready to try it? Could all crash. If it does, I have another version. I mean, I've done this before and it all worked, but okay, so that's a good sign. I don't know if you can see it, but it says enter student ID, SID. I'm going to say, I have to go down there to do it. I'm starting it with an S and then do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The reason I'm starting with an S is so it doesn't get confused and think it's a number. All right, so I just did a number, a random number. You can do whatever you want. The student name. What? Xnay? Like, oh, I left an L off of email. Oh, it didn't allow me to, it didn't call the, did I do the wrong, it didn't let me enter the GPAs. Everything worked, except that it didn't allow me to enter the GPA. Let me see in display. So we got enter grades, make student. Why didn't it call enter grades? Oh, you know what? Well, no, that's well done, not equal y. That should be okay. Why didn't it do that? So we did print self student. I'm just trying to figure out why it did not do enter grades. Anybody have a clue why?
User done is Y.
Yeah, but I'm saying, well, done is not equal to y, do the loop. All right, let's change done to I'm going to change this to equal, and we'll change it to in. And then input. So done would be no. All right, let's try running it again. So, and syntax error. I have 2 quotes. All right, one more time. All right, so I do a student ID, S1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, some numbers. Joe, email, Joe at some school .edu. Okay, so now it's doing the loop. You just didn't like my condition before. So I'm going to enter the course name. So let's say ITC 110. Ooh, you know what? Well, that should be all right. It should still allow. All right. Let's stop it. I think it's the space that killed it. It's not liking the spaces, although it should. Let's do Jeb. I've never met a Jeb, I don't think. Why is it crashing on the course name? Could not convert string to float. Enter the number of credits.
I'm missing input, the credits from.
Let me look at so that would be in student, right? Actually, it would be here. I did float.
I need input to.
Oh, you know what? I did not do an input. Good eye. And I need to close double prints at the end. I do that. I did do input there, but I didn't do input with the floats. I had sleep last night. I don't have as good an excuse as I did yesterday. All right, one last try. All right, so some bizarre student ID. Sue, email, Sue at gmail.com. Course name, ITC, and I think actually, let's see if it allows this spaces now. 110. Number of credits 4. Final grade 4. So we'll say in. Okay, so we'll enter a couple more. ITC 220. Number of credits 4, 5. Actually, I said 4 for ITC 110. Oh well. Final grade 3.2. I just want something to average. Okay, and so I'm going to say no for one more time. What is 102? That's 3 credits, right? Whether it is or not, it is now. 3, and we'll say that you got a 3.8 on that. So I'm going to say why such a quit. So it lists out all of the courses, so it gives me the student number, their name, and their email. Like I said, this is just to print the class, right? Because that's the string method. We loop through the list that we got, and it gives us the courses. Try to put a space there that have been lined up better, and it gives me the credits and the grade, and then it gives me the GPA, which we could format if we wanted to be pretty. So it all worked. Sure.
For students, can you go to that file? I just want to look at something real quick.
Sure.
Just an idea chance.
So we go to student.
And then can you see what they're for? No, yeah, just like right there. 1 second.
So there were a couple of things that I had to do. One of them is I had to put the range in here. That was an error that it had at the beginning. And it did work. Once I did that, everything works fine. What?
Oh, you can see it there for 1 second.
Sure.
Just double check.
I'll post this all too. Other questions? How many worked? How many didn't work? Most of them didn't work. Let me come look. Who do I go to first? Decide on that one. Yours didn't work. What did you get? So there's an error. How do you say this is the best? They're not sure what Here's one. Yeah, and the capitalization. This says an student with the capital, lowercase s, this says with the capital. Check over here. So give it there. Yeah, but that's just. Give me a second, let me look at it. I'm not seeing it. Yeah, that should be okay.
Yours is.
So, that's as a, You know what? Which one is this one? Elliot. I originally typed in links, but I was wrong. I think you're real close. Yours worked it out? Oh, okay. I will go over it. I'm gonna post it too. Did you get yours solved? Yours solved?
I thought I did everything. I'll check my Twitter.
Let me see what the error is.
Oh, okay.
So, let's go back.
Oh, iron?
It's usually like it around the first line.
Well, how would I clear it? Let me just try it.
Sure. Okay. So the traceback just goes through whatever separate file. But,
That was the last one, because my names are different than yours, except the date, but I have the date in front of it. I.
for
Grade student.
grade.
Yes, that's great. Sorry, remind us of work. I wanna look at it.
I don't think it's
Of how I named it,
yeah.
I didn't remember, I didn't see it, or you named it. I just did it, so keep track of it.
Maybe rename it, but remove the underscore, just leave the 1204 in front of it. Because it says that that's an illegal token.
Okay, well, I'll just leave as grade.
Working my way back over the. Address is not, oh, add grade is not defined. So it shouldn't be self-student, it should be self-student dot. Not equal. Add grade belongs to student, it should be just self-student dot.
Again?
Yeah. So let's. And then just get rid of the equal. Because add grade is a method in student. Yeah. You guys got yours one?
Yeah, just.
I think so.
Yours is working?
Yeah.
How about yours? And then that one.
Yeah, I have to.
Oh, okay. And you found. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna post it. This is the assignment that we're gonna do. Basically. Who else? I didn't get yours all the way down. Did you get it going yet? Still having errors? Let's see if I can figure it out. Let's see. Says definitely, but it's not. Yeah. Oh. It's not a definite name. So it has to be. Oh. Somebody give something. You can check. Yeah, oh, yes. No, it's student, it's student. It's student. And file and, student. Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Sure. What happened?
I found like 2 or 3 errors I made by this week, but now I'm here.
You don't have something.
This should be over.
Oh, definitely.
No.
You don't have something.
Let's see what the
Right again. I changed the name to the date after.
Right. From student. So you're,
I put the date behind it. So that's-
yeah.
Here? Fine.
Capital S.
I'm sorry. Oh, the display right here, student display, so for the last three upgrades, to display and student, so you want student display again?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what.
It's just last year.
This is not.
You don't have something.
What is it? We can complain about grades.
I asked you. I roll like, I write notes for myself, I gotta like say more.
Really?
I asked what.
But that's generally how that works. I won't understand this until the next
They won't pass it.
Right, right.
That's why you won't
That's what happens.
usually, they all have something.
But yeah, exactly, like, that really has got what it was.
Is it one important there's any errors?
I think it was great.
Um,
But,
That's the.
these photos.
So like,
oh, really?
Yeah, there's,
It's usually like your final score.
there has to be a function, they have to be exempted from the function.
Usually alcohol, and then
This
it's about.
is in the class, and that would be. And then underneath it is the calculator. Yeah. Maybe it'll work. See if it'll go. It might crash yet, still elsewhere.
Okay.
Actually, the video is still running. I should stop it. Sure. Why is it going like this? Are you not using this machine? Where did you save it?
I'm guessing when you end those.
When you run this machine? No. So I'm wondering if it needs.
It's right on the
Machine side on.
Yeah, but it's not calculated. Apply and add all three of these.
So now it's
And then
icon.
you append it.
Sure. Give it a shot. I'm sure it is.
So, great. Or add grade.
At least we got errors. So it's Python. But the Python hasn't been installed.
And then you
See what the
do
error is. It's like the equal.
every time you have to stop that.
Oh, these have to be stamped.
That's how you
Have those up there.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, just tap them on the other way. There you go. They have to belong to the function.
So that grade itself value is not
This one, and then the self also.
I guess
To the student.
I didn't know you could do this. So I guess it just.
I don't know if you want to go one more space.
I guess it just.
I guess try. So I think, see where that line is, I'm pretty sure that has to be on.
I think.
But
Try. See if we get that right. So there's an expected indented block where,
Yeah.
I think that's.
although this needs to have a function, return.
guessing right here.
Try,
So close.
it actually, when you run it, it says. Did we get an error? And these two actually need to go out to the cinema. That needs to come out of the cinema. It's amazing. They have to be at the same Those look like they're all right.
Right, so this was, so I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I get it.
It works.
No. It's what issues.
Mine crashed at print.
So I crashed it to print, but it made it till there.
Okay, yeah. This is when you start.
Let me kill the video, by the way.
Great.
What's going on?
Convention center, expected to remain basic law, where the grade, everything is in students, Are any of them off?
This was happening. This way. Self-doc right here is from this file. You add that.
It's still the invention, but I'm trying to figure out where. Where is it moving again? That should be fine there. Depth, where's the, on the line. But that's inside the core. So that should be okay. It's possible that something's off by one character, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know why. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing that one thing where see these lines, they need to line up with those lines, but the depths too. So these, those two, and it's like these two, I'm not sure I see where the other.
That's why I think you do it take more.
Let me kill the video. And I'm also gonna post this if you wanna look at it. The thing is that that's the kind of error that's gonna drive me nuts because it's impossible to see. But one of the stanzas may, one of the functions may be off a character or so. All right, so let me stop the video. So remember on this video, there's a lot of dead stuff.